You know the story, 300 Spartan warriors, standing alone against 1,000,000 Persians, fighting to defend freedom and democracy. It is one of the most famous stories in the history of warfare, and almost every word of it is wrong. It wasn't 300. It wasn't 1,000,000. They weren't fighting for freedom, and the most famous quote from the battle was probably never said. This is the real story of Thermopylae. It's more complicated, more human, and more tragic than the myth. August 480 BC, the largest army the world has ever seen, is marching south through Greece. King Xerxes of Persia has spent 4 years preparing this invasion. He has bridged the Hellespont, a mile of open water, with boats lashed together. He has carved a canal through a mountain so his fleet can pass safely. His army stretches for miles, and now it is heading straight for a narrow coastal pass in central Greece called Thermopylae, the Hot Gates. At its narrowest point, the pass is wide enough for a single wagon. Greece is not a nation. It is a collection of city-states that spend most of their time at war with each other. The idea of a united defense is radical. Many cities have already surrendered to the Persians, but a force of Greeks has gathered at the Hot Gates. And here's the first thing the legend gets wrong. There are not 300 of them. There are 7,300 Spartans, 700 Thespians, 400 Corinthians, 500 from Dateia, 500 from Mantinea, 1,000 from Arcadia, soldiers from a dozen different cities, all standing in a pass that is about to become the most famous bottleneck in military history. Day 1, Xerxes sends his infantry forward. Thousands of men pour into the narrow pass, and they hit a wall. The Greeks are fighting as a phalanx, shields locked, spears forward, each man protecting the man next to him. In the open, the Persian numbers would overwhelm them in minutes. But in this pass, only a handful of Persians can engage at once. The Greeks hold. Wave after wave breaks against the phalanx. The Persians fall. The Greeks rotate, fresh units cycling to the front, exhausted men moving to the rear. The pass is too narrow for the Persians to use their cavalry or their numbers. Day 2. Xerxes sends the Immortals, his elite guard, 10,000 professional soldiers, the finest in the empire. The Immortals are repulsed. Herodotus says Xerxes leapt from his throne, 3 times in rage, watching his best troops fail in the narrow pass. 2 days, thousands of Persian dead. The Greeks are still standing. And then, on the second night, everything changes. His name is Ephialtes. He is a local Greek, from the region near the pass. He is not a soldier. He is not a commander. He is a man who wants money. And he knows something. There is a goat path, the Oenopeia, that winds through the mountains behind the Greek position. It is narrow and difficult, but it exists. And nobody has guarded it well enough. Ephialtes walks into the Persian camp and tells them, Xerxes sends the Immortals, the same elite unit that failed in the pass, up the mountain path under cover of darkness. By dawn, 10,000 Persian soldiers will be behind the Greek lines. The name Ephialtes was a common Greek name before this night. After, it became so despised that no parent ever used it again. Over centuries, the word evolved. Today in modern Greek, Ephialtes means nightmare. Dawn of day 3. The news arrives. The Persians are behind them. Leonidas has a choice. He can retreat with the entire army, save 7,000 men and fight another day, or he can hold the pass a few more hours to cover the retreat. He chooses to hold, and he dismisses most of the army. Go south. Survive. Tell Greece what happened here. The 300 Spartans stay. They are under orders. Their king commands it. But here is the part the legend forgets. 700 Thespians refuse to leave. They are not professional soldiers. They are citizens, farmers, architects. Their commander, Thermopylae, makes his living designing buildings. They are from the small city of Thespiae, directly in the path of the Persian advance. They know that when the Persians pass Thermopylae, their city will be destroyed. They have every reason to retreat and try to save their families. They choose to stay. The Spartans, according to Herodotus, exchanged cloaks with the Thespians and promised to be allies for eternity. And this, not the final fight, is the real emotional climax of Thermopylae. Not warriors following orders, but civilians choosing to die. The remaining Greeks, roughly 1,300 men, know what is coming. Rather than wait to be surrounded in the pass, they advance into open ground, charge into certain death. Leonidas falls early. What follows is one of the most brutal passages in Herodotus. The Greeks fight over his body. They push the Persians back 4 times to protect their king's corpse. When their spears break, they fight with swords. When their swords shatter, they fight with hands and teeth. It ends with arrows. The Persians, unable to break through even the final remnant, step back and shoot them from a distance. Every Spartan dies. Every Thespian dies. After the battle, Xerxes orders Leonidas' body beheaded and crucified, a violation of Persian custom that honored brave enemies. Ancient writers interpreted this as evidence of how deeply the 3-day resistance had shaken him. After the battle, a poet named Simonides wrote an epitaph that would become one of the most famous in history. Go, tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here obedient to their laws we lie. It mentions only the Spartans. The 700 Thespians who chose to die are not named. And this is where the myth machine begins. The Spartans had the most powerful propaganda culture in the ancient world. Glory and honor were the currency of their society. The story of Thermopylae was shaped from the very beginning to serve Spartan interests. And here is the second thing the legend gets wrong. The Spartans were not fighting for freedom. Sparta was one of the most brutal slaveholding societies in the ancient world. Their entire military system depended on the helots, enslaved populations who outnumbered Spartan citizens roughly 7-1. Helots farmed the land, did the labor, and were subjected to ritual humiliation. Spartan teenagers were sent out to murder helots as a coming-of-age exercise. The famous Spartan military discipline. It existed because the Spartans were constantly afraid of a helot revolt. They drilled because they were terrified of the people they enslaved. Herodotus mentions that helots accompanied the Spartans to Thermopylae, possibly 900 of them. Slaves fighting alongside their masters in a battle that would be called a fight for freedom. 1 month after Thermopylae, the Persians have marched south. They have sacked Athens. They have burned the Acropolis. Greece appears finished. And then an Athenian general named Themistocles, not a Spartan, lures the entire Persian fleet into the narrow straits of Salamis. The massive Persian ships cannot maneuver. The smaller Greek triremes tear them apart. The Battle of Salamis destroys Persian naval power. Without ships, Xerxes cannot supply his army. He retreats to Persia. The following year, the Greek army defeats the remaining Persian force at Plataea. Greece is saved, not by 300 Spartans in a mountain pass, by Athenian sailors in a strait. Thermopylae was a glorious... There is a quote that has become the most famous words from this battle, molon labe. Come and take them. Supposedly said by Leonidas when Xerxes demanded the Greeks surrender their weapons. It appears on bumper stickers, military unit patches, gun rights merchandise around the world. It is carved into monuments. It is the most quoted ancient Greek phrase in modern politics, and it was almost certainly never said. The phrase does not appear in Herodotus, who wrote within a generation of the battle. It first appears in Plutarch, writing 500 years later, in an exchange of letters between Leonidas and Xerxes. Not a battlefield conversation. I think the real lesson of Thermopylae isn't about the quote that probably wasn't said, or the 300 who followed orders. It's about the 700 who chose to stay. Citizen soldiers from a small city, not warriors by profession, not commanded by a king. They looked at certain death and decided that leaving would be worse than dying. For 2,477 years, they had no monument. In 1997, the Greek government finally erected one, a small stone marker standing beside the grand statue of Leonidas. The Spartans got a marble lion and a quote carved in stone. The Thespians got a small plaque, 2.5 millennia late. Stories are told by the people who survive, and the people who survive often aren't the people who deserve to be remembered. Speaking of stories everyone thinks they know, there is a ship. The most famous shipwreck in history. You've seen the movie. You know the iceberg. But there is a piece of this story that was hidden for decades. Warning messages that were ignored. Rescue ships that were closer than anyone admitted. A corporate decision that may have cost hundreds of lives. The Titanic isn't a story about an iceberg. It's a story about a cover-up, and the evidence was sitting in a courtroom drawer for almost a century.